The following commentary I'm about to provide is one of those elements where I know where I want to go with what I'm saying, the thought that I have, but it's hard for me to explain because I guess I still have some reconciling to do with certain things. I can only express it based off me having a reaction to something I just heard or something I just observed. Whether I'm right or wrong, to me, it doesn't matter. It's not the point. But what I am happy about is that more and more as time passes, I discover and acknowledge just how truly bad my father's neglect was on my mind. And the reason I put it like that is because when I think about how it is that I end up having the opinion that I have, having the thought that I have, I feel like only a person who has suffered from being invalid, from being neglected, rejected, pushed away, not visited, someone actively not wanting to be a father, that has to have an effect on you. And I guess out of a degree of shame, I have existed up until maybe some 8 years ago in denial about the true harm, the true effect that had on me. And it wasn't until I started exploring matters like this, topics like this, and especially putting myself out there and not being afraid of expressing myself, because I always felt like nothing that I had to say mattered. My existence didn't matter. I never quite knew why I felt that way. But now, after so much expressing myself, evaluating things, and especially sharing it with other people and other people sharing with me that they go through that and that we seem to have that same thing in common, it all makes sense. And now I try to point out to myself when I may be having a reaction or having a thought as a consequence of the neglect I suffered in my childhood. That at the time that I'm a kid, I guess because I'm being managed by another leader, another manager, say my mom, it didn't really have an opportunity to boil as bad as it could. But just because it didn't, it doesn't mean that it was never going to happen. It just means that as an adult, when that level of supervision begins to die down and I start walking on my own, shit's going to happen that I won't immediately recognize what the background of it is until shit happens and I have processing time, and then I can objectively tell myself only someone who has gone through whatever it is I have gone through can feel that. Or I don't want to say only, but pretty much guaranteed that if you are someone who comes from a background like that, you can expect for that symptom to manifest. I guess it's no different from the symptoms, behaviors that people who have been abused express, the abused woman syndrome, if you will, the way that manifests. Well, the neglected, abandoned child syndrome, I'm guessing is also a thing. I've never heard of it being called like that. But whatever the behaviors associated with those circumstances are, you can expect to see exhibited. That's what's happening. With that introduction out of the way, I'm going to just go ahead and say what it is that I had in mind that inspired this little monologue of mine. And it has to do with when people talk to you about something and then you express yourself about what you just heard, how it made you feel, what you interpret out of it, what your experiences with it. Notice what I'm saying? Your. If I'm your audience, I would think that you're communicating it to me because at some point you're going to want to hear my thoughts. But if I give thoughts, if I share an opinion that revolve around me or my experience or how I perceive something or how I may relate to something, in some instances I can't because I've never experienced something, or I cannot deduce due to a lack of experience, something like that. Sometimes when you start talking like that, people will accuse you of making it about you, thus telling you it's not about you. And I'm like, okay, if it's not about me, how about you reserve your opinion, keep your thought to yourself, keep your story to yourself, and don't share with me? Because if you're sharing anything with me, the best way I know to continue the conversation, to elaborate on the conversation, is for me to introduce my perception, my point of view, my feeling, my thought. But some people get offended by that. And I think it might be that something I hear very often is when you're an adult, life is no longer supposed to be about you. And if I had to explain what that means, it probably means something like up until the point you need to be cared for, say as an underage kid, then at that point, sure, some things are about you, maybe about you, because you are dependent. But the moment that disconnect happens, you're supposed to be indoctrinated into whatever it is that you're going to do for the rest of your life, how you're going to serve in this society. And especially when you become a parent, that is when the meaning of it's not about you is supposed to take even greater strength, because now you have to care for someone else, you have to be more selfless, you have to neglect yourself, sacrifice yourself on some fronts. Because if you want to be a parent who pretty much doesn't miss a detail on their kids, you're gonna have to start redirecting your time and effort elsewhere. And the way we can name that is, you know how the average mother, especially at least in my social circle, maybe it's because of the place I live and how this is a relatively poor area, you could say. Whenever a woman has a kid, she never recovers her fitness. Let's say that you were kind of average, just small, small frame, good body, something like that. Then you have a kid, you gain all that weight, and you never shed it, you never lose it. And as the years go back, you weaken and weaken and weaken because you're not working out, you're not taking care of yourself like you're supposed to, because all of that energy, all of that effort, because it's not about you, is going to your kid. And then something happens where you start getting sick, you start showing symptoms. Some of them you don't address because you cannot be away from the house. You cannot afford to address yourself because there is a dependent depending on you. It's no different, if we want to look at it another way, from how sometimes there are women who end up ill and nobody sees it coming, nobody realizes it, comes as a shock because all of the energy, the effort, and attention went to the man, because the man was probably more susceptible to getting hurt, being tired, coming down with a chronic illness, being injured, you name it. And then the woman is being a servant to the husband, to the kids. But at what point is somebody serving her outside of, well, the man goes out there and work? I'm talking about actually addressing her well-being, her health, and her concerns. Now, I'm expressing all this from the perspective of a woman because obviously that is what I am. I'm not saying that this is a female exclusive issue. It could also be that they are single fathers out there taking care of their kids, taking care of the home. They're by themselves and they may be away from family. They have a career that they're trying to hold down. Therefore, they start gaining weight. They start getting sick. They have chronic pain. It could apply in that manner too. But that's the thing about the quote, it's not about you, that I absolutely abhor. Because when is it my turn to be listened to be respected, to be loved even, to be acknowledged as a human being with feelings and thoughts and emotions and fears, concerns, all those things? But you can't do that because it's not about you. Once you're an adult, it's not about you. The way I see it, when you're an adult, it is supposed to be about you. You're fending for yourself. You don't want to go down. And I hate that. Given the state of our modern days, fuck yeah, it has to be about me. Because now the way that everything is presented now in society, there is a lot of individualism going on. Individualism is what's being promoted. You become responsible for your home, you become responsible for your finances, you become responsible for your education, you become responsible for your civil status, like marital status, you become responsible for the management of your home, you become responsible. When you put it like that, it almost sounds like the only choice I have is to make everything about me, because I'm having to manage everything. I'm having to own everything. So, how am I supposed to not make it about me? Everything is about you being responsible for everything. So, if everything ever is my exclusive responsibility because the nuclear family has been broken down and parents are not parenting like they're supposed to because both of them have to work, both of them have to be away, I am being raised by the streets, the school, online, all of those things, then why would it not be about me anymore if that is literally the way that I have learned to grow and exist in the society? If I don't make it about me, I'm gonna die of neglect. I'm gonna die because I forgot to take care of my own self. If I were to take the it's not about you literally, then what's left for me? Then what? I'm gonna die. I'm dead. As far as I know, I can't be very productive if I'm dead. Then what? That is incredibly wasteful. An incredibly wasteful way for life to go slip through your fingers and for you to go. I hope that what I said helps make sense, helps somebody look at it maybe from a slightly different perspective. I'm really not sure anymore what the perspective is on this matter. I just wanted to basically define why I hate when people say that something is not about you, because I kind of get it. When there are situations in which it's not proper for it to be your turn, say if it's somebody else's wedding, then of course you're not the center of attention, you're not the party. I get it. If it's a funeral, then of course you're not the center of attention. It's not your time, it's not your moment. Or say when you are taking part in, say, my recent experience meeting my boyfriend's family, some more family members, I looked at it as I'm the one who stays behind. The real blood relatives get to go first because this is their show, this is their episode. They go ahead and I'm introduced last. I had no issues with that, and I deliberately made sure that the younger niece in this instance went ahead of me because she was kind of timid. I'm not sure if she wasn't sure what to do or what it was, but I just continuously invited everyone to go in front of me because I know it's not about me. It's not my turn. It's not my episode. I will be introduced to these folks for the first time, but I understand my place is at the back of the line because this is a family visit where the relatives are visiting them. And it's not the family arranged this to introduce me. I'm the center. I'm the attention. It's not happening at my place. It's not happening in my land, in my territory, in my domain. So why would I try to take the lead in a situation like this when my presence being there was courtesy of the host of this event? I get it from that kind of formality standpoint, but overall, when it comes to rejecting people being self-centered when expressing themselves and accusing them of being like narcissistic or something because they revolve on themselves, I look at it as depending on how you express it, what your intention is. If you're not providing anything of value, like say if you're responding with your personal experience but you're not describing what it is that impacts you about this, if you just plainly own the matter and don't add anything substantial to it, I think that's when it's bad. But for you to express yourself based off how you see things, taste things, hear things, etc., I think that is a good thing. I don't see the evil behind that. And I don't understand the people who get offended and accuse you of making it about you. When you're a kid, that's when it's supposed to be your turn to have things, have the attention, etc. But when you have that neglect going on, when that part in your brain has been underdeveloped or even harmed, scarred, hurt, there's only so much that childhood can fulfill for you until those problems begin to surface when you're an adult. And as an adult, if you had an incomplete childhood and in adulthood nothing is ever about you, at what point do I get to live life fully, enjoy it, if I gotta detach from myself once again? Because during my childhood, I was semi detached. Like one half of me was not stimulated, it wasn't developed properly. And then as an adult, once childhood runs out, it's like, okay, you're out here in the world now, make it work. How are you supposed to make it work if you haven't really had the opportunity and development to experience the fullness of you being served properly? Because, say, in my case, attention toward me suffered because my brother also had challenges. He was born with certain disabilities that fortunately they were addressed and now he's fine now. But during my precious childhood time, many of those years were consumed by focus that could have gone to me, should have gone to me, had to be redirected elsewhere. And when it was my turn to get attention, the deliverer, provider of my attention was someone who was stressed, overwhelmed, absorbed by other issues from someone else. Therefore, I never got my proper turn. I was never indulged in fully and properly. At what point do I get to enjoy myself? At what point do I get attention? At what point can it be about me for like 5 seconds or however the duration can be? And that's why I guess some of us who are grown ups now and we're having trouble with relationships because we can be kind of brutal and savage and we say things the way it is. We're just brutally honest and you don't get that sweetness out of us. Well, maybe understand what it's like to have someone with a strong character like us, like me. Sure, I may look all harmless and peaceful and not offensive, but when I start talking and I start getting deep into something, I will call out things for the way it is. I don't have denial problems. I don't have sugarcoating problems. I spend most of my time observing. When you do more observing than talking, it helps with your objectivity because your observations cannot be denied. Now, if you observe a lot and you start twisting it to try to gain something, that's when it becomes a problem and it turns fucked up. But if you have the time to observe and process and you do this without interruptions, you're unstoppable. And I guess a lot of the people who feel offended like this, they all have that in common, which is you're not very present, you're not a very good listener, you're not a good thinker, you're not a good interpreter. And when you finally encounter someone who has those skills honed, that's when the bomb explodes. And I don't get that. Some of us adults are experiencing some delays with certain things, but in a weird way, that delay is making us last longer in a stage in our lives that we should have let go of. And now we can observe other adults who had those shortcomings, but they haven't been addressed, nor have they been explored, nor treated adequately. And now we are treated as the monsters because we're here calling out adults on their bullshit. And maybe that's the whole situation and mini war that we have between the younger generation and the older generation, or the older generation simply cannot for a second look at stuff from our perspective objectively because they are focused on the experience that they got at their time. They believe that is what we are inherently inheriting, but it's not happening that way, and they're having a hard time accepting it because they are afraid that maybe they had a part in the reality that we are not getting the same things that they got back in their day. whatever revolution they had going on, it just did not work. And they're not prepared to hear that their efforts were futile. I look at the older generation as they made things about them. They for sure did. And they got everything they wanted. For some reason, if we start doing the same, it can't be about you. But it being about them is what made them get what they wanted. But we're not here really criticizing or questioning that. We are trying to beat down on the new generation because the new generation has some reparations to go through that they may be owed or something so that they can have a better chance to get ahead in society now. That, and when you come from my background where you felt like you were never important, but then you reach a point in adulthood where you realize that no, fuck yeah, you do matter, and that people who you respect reinforce that, it is a game changer. And that's where I'm at. I'm just having trouble establishing my relationship with that fact as opposed to just living in the shadow about it. That can only get me so far, and it's not getting me very far. I sincerely don't get it. So, guys, please let me know your thoughts on this one. Let me know if you understood where I was coming from, or maybe some of you guys can be really good about helping me define a matter properly by indicating the category something actually falls into. Sometimes I'll be discussing economics things, and some of you will point out, oh, you're describing free market versus supply and demand, things like that. You're helping me organize it. Help me polish this topic. This is one of those topics that's very important to me because, again, as someone who's pretty isolated and someone who grew up with that neglect, it's obvious that my social development took a hit, but I don't think that my progress is being hindered because I cannot participate with others. Not at all. If anything, when I get involved in conversations, people suddenly go like, why don't you express yourself more often? Because the questions that you asked were very good. The way that you continued the conversation was really good. You made it fun. You made it thoughtful and even thought provoking. You should just come out of your shell. And I'm like, no, I will deploy myself into a topic when I'm ready to make an impact. I cannot be, I guess, self absorbed and making it about me and shy, timid, reserved, hidden in a shell at the same time. Those are complete polar opposites. So maybe stop trying to label me when you don't know me. When I'm just being a normal, regular person, I don't have ill intent. That's what I mean. I guess it's some other people's insistence on categorizing things, putting you in a box, whatever the fuck. Maybe that is what makes this feel this way. But I'm just really sick and tired of hearing people being accused of being self absorbed or narcissistic when they're simply describing their experience through life. They deserve to be heard just as much as you feel compelled to talk and describe your experience. Other people have a right to do that too. But somehow you're, I guess, mad that someone else took your spotlight somehow in a conversation that's a one on one. You would think it's about exchanging thoughts and ideas. What happened to the art of conversing? That's pretty much what this is about. But, anyways, you guys, again, please let me know any thoughts you may have because maybe one of you, as it usually happens, is going to say the thing that I need to hear to clarify something for me or even organize my thoughts better and even come to peace with some things. You guys are super good about that, and I thank you for that. Okay, that's it. Bye.